Guys, the Fed just held interest rates steady. They didn't lower the interest rates, the Fed funds rate at all. But here's the part that nobody's talking about. It doesn't actually change anything about your own personal financial situation. So let me walk you through exactly what happened just a couple of days ago. The Fed funds rate, which is currently sitting at 3.5% to 3.75%. That's the range. It always sits in a range. Instead of lowering that Fed funds rate and making money more cheaper to borrow, the Fed left it alone. The Fed didn't touch it. And just as a quick reminder, so we're all clear about this thing, the Fed funds rate is simply the rate that banks charge one another for overnight lending. Now, the reason the Fed chose to keep the Fed funds rate right where it's at is simply because of this, guys, uncertainty. Okay? When you look across the world right now, there's no telling what's coming next. You got wars on several different continents. You got foreign relations with a lot of friction. You got oil prices that are going up, and you got a lot of issues that are brewing in a lot of places throughout the world. So with all those things going on, you got this Fed here in the US that's not fully confident that inflation is under control. So since they're not confident about that and they see all this other stuff going on in the world, they're being careful about making the wrong move too soon. Now, whether you agree with the Fed or you don't agree with the Fed, that's neither here nor there, right? Whether you lean left or you lean right or you like the president, you don't like none of that really matters. We're talking green here, right? Now, in case you're wondering how inflation is doing, the latest core CPI inflation came in about a week ago, and it showed that core CPI inflation, that's the inflation that removes food and energy out of the equation, because they say that food and energy is too volatile, right? They get a better reading when they take food and energy out. The core CPI inflation right now is up 0.2% month over month, and it's up 2.5% year over year. Now think about this. Inflation has come down steady since the summer of 2022, and it still has not gotten to the Fed's target that they wanted, 2%. The Fed has been talking about this 2% target for inflation for the last 4 years almost. So it's been that target for years, but it still hasn't gotten there. So that tells us right there, inflation has been incredibly sticky, stubborn. So what does this mean? It means nothing really changed. And that's exactly the point. I don't care what YouTube channel you're watching that says, watch out, the Fed did, watch out. Look, nothing really changed. Let me say it like this. Most people treat the Fed's decision about what they do with the Fed funds rate, raise it, lower it, keep it the same. They treat it like it's an on-off switch. Like one decision from the Fed is all of a sudden going to make our lives easier, make everything cheaper, make money more manageable. No, that's not how this thing works. You got several economies out here. One is the big old macro economy that we're talking about. The other economy is the economy in your home, the economy that you control, the economy that you can do something about every single day. You got a household economy. The Fed don't fix our personal financial economy. The Fed don't fix the economy inside of our own four walls. The Fed doesn't fix our personal financial issues and problems. What the Fed does is simply sort of change the speed at which a lot of issues show up, but they don't change our own personal household. So here's the deal. If something already wasn't working in your financial life, this environment that we're in right now with all these issues going on, all it does is make any of those things that you were short on in your own personal life, it just makes them more obvious. So the deal is this. If nothing really changed with the Fed, then what actually matters is what was already going on with you in your personal financial life. Now, I don't mean to be cruel and harsh. I just want to keep it real, right? Because this is where all this stuff really starts to matter. Because if nothing changed with the Fed, then your situation doesn't change because of the Fed. Whether they lower the rates or raise the rates or keep the rates the same, that don't change your situation. It comes down to how you're personally set up with your own finances in your own four walls. So let's talk about this. A lot of people right now are dealing with decisions that they already made before, such as bad debt. That bad debt, it's already locked in, no matter what the Fed does. that interest that you're paying on any bad debt on something that's not going up in value, all that payment on that interest was set in motion before the Fed's decision ever happened, right? So whether the Fed moves or they don't move, you're still dealing with that bad debt. This is less about what's happening right now, and it's more about what's already taken place in your life, your financial life. Now, once you understand all of this, here's what the next question is. The next question becomes, what do you have working for you right now? And this is where cash comes in. Let's talk cash because it's important. Because cash is what gives all of us some breathing room. Cash is what slows everything down and allows us to think through and think a little more logically and clearer through a lot of things going on. Cash is really what lets us make decisions without pressure. Think about it. Here's the part that a lot of people miss. In a higher rate environment like we're in right now, cash actually helps. Cash pays you. Think about it like high yield savings accounts right now, money market accounts right now, some CDs right now. They all benefit, right? These fixed assets like those things that are very little risk, they all benefit from higher rates. Right? There's a reason your high yield savings account is still giving you 3%, 2.5%, 3.5% right now. There's a reason, because the Fed funds rate is still a little higher. So think about it like this. While everybody is sitting around waiting on change, waiting on the Fed, there's actually something that's already working. If you're positioned to use it or to have it, right? Now, if you don't have cash, that's where things start to feel a little different for a lot of people. Because when everything in your life is already tight, you feel everything. And when I say tight, I mean you bring in a bunch of money and then you got to send out a bunch of money on bills and on things that you owe and on expenses, right? You bring in $3,000 a month, but you're sending out $2,900 a month. You bring it in $5,000, you're sending out $4,900 a month. When things are tight like that, every bill hits harder. Every unexpected expense that comes up can throw you off and get you out of your game. Not because something dramatic happened, but because there's no room. You don't have no margin. You don't have nowhere to wiggle. And when there's nowhere to wiggle and there's no margin, small things feel big. And that same pressure, it doesn't just show up in the bills that you owe. You see it right now in how people are reacting to the stock market. What's happening in the stock market right now? Well, stocks are down. Stocks have been down. Hasn't been a good year to date for anybody in terms of stocks. Maybe there's some here and there, but for the most part, the S&P is in the red, in the negative. Bonds are also down. And when you get stocks down and bonds down at the same time, that's not normal, right? When you see that, it usually means there's still pressure underneath the surface. It means that inflation still has a chance to rear its head. That's one of the reasons the Fed didn't lower the Fed funds rate. And here's the deal. All this can happen even with the headline numbers looking okay. So people look at the headline numbers and say, oh, 4.4% unemployment. Oh, inflation's only 2.5%. And people feel good with that. But look, in your own wallet, in your own household, if you have no margin, you have no cash, you still feel tight. And you still feel what? Uncertain. A lot of people don't know what to do next. And people have this feeling of uncertainty. And it comes from not being grounded in your own position, your own personal finances, your own four walls, your own economy. So what do people do when they feel this crunch, this pressure that a lot of people feel? People start automatically looking outward. What is the Fed going to do? Man, I hope they lower rates. Man, I hope they raise rates. Man, I hope they don't touch the rates. What is the market? What's the stock market doing right now? Man, what should I do next? People start feeling uncertain, asking questions about all the stuff that's outside of their control. But that's the wrong direction, because now your decisions are tied to things that you don't control. Never tie your financial decisions based on things that are out of your control. You want to tie your financial decisions based on things that you control. So a better move is to flip that question completely around. You know, the question about what should I do next? Instead of asking yourself, what should I do next? Or what's going to happen next? Why don't you ask yourself this question? If nothing changed at all right now, would I still be okay? Would my personal finances still be just fine? Because the answer to that question tells you everything. Would you still be okay no matter what the Fed does? That's the question. So now what happens if you ask yourself that question? Now your focus changes. Now instead of waiting on the Fed, waiting on the stock market, waiting on geopolitical events, waiting on inflation, you're not predicting. You're just tightening up what you control. You're just cleaning up the bad debt. You're just building a stash of cash. You're just creating more margin in your finances so that instead of $4,000 coming in and $3,900 goes out, $4,000 can come in and $2,500 can go out. You create space. You create margin every single month in your money. And you start making decisions based on your situation, not on the situation outside of you that you don't control, and not based on what CNN and Fox News and ABC and CBC and Bloomberg News. Look, all that stuff should not make a difference on what you do, because none of what we need to do to get our money right depends on those things, depends on the Fed. It all depends on us. And this is the part that actually matters. Nothing changed this week. The Fed didn't lower rates. They didn't make money cheaper to borrow. They didn't create some new opportunity because of it. So if you're waiting on that stuff, there's nothing to wait on, which means whatever needs to be addressed in your own personal financial situation is still right there in front of you for you to address. That's what all this actually means. Look, if you want to help putting this thing together in your own four walls with the things that you control, check out my free training in the description box below. And if you got value from this video, smash the like button for me and drop me a comment below and just say, I got value. That lets me know that this type of content is helpful. Guys, the best person who's going to take care of the old you is the young you. Until the next video, peace.